Welcome, welcome to the pre-recording of lecture 22 of MCS 481, a course on computational geometry. At this point, we are at the end of chapter 7 in our textbook. We are in the middle of the course, in the middle of the semester as well. We have covered, and we are still covering, Voronoi diagrams. So the topic of today is to investigate the n log n justification for a sweep line algorithm to construct a Voronoi diagram of n sides. So that's the main topic for today, but I will try to make this lecture self-contained and go over the main points that we have covered, the complexity and the characterization of a Voronoi diagram, how you can compute Voronoi diagrams, and today I'm going to try to demonstrate something about the original C++ running of Seagull. Then the definition of the sweep line algorithm that we explained in the last lecture, and then we arrive at the justification of the algorithmic costs. In the second part of this lecture, we will cover some applications. So these are sections in the textbook that are marked with a star, kind of optional or perhaps more advanced as well. There is the possibility in this course to do a final project. The Voronoi diagrams of line segments, for example, are relevant to robot motion planning. So that is a possibility. If you are really want to go deeper into Voronoi diagrams, then this could be a topic for a future project or a final project, I should say. Okay, let's try to get to the definition of what is a Voronoi diagram again. In the post office problem, we have three post offices marked here with these black dots. The regions of the same color indicate the nearest post office one should go to should one live in a region of that color. Um, Otherwise said, if you are living, if your position is in the green region, then the shortest distance compared to all the three dots, the shortest distance is here, this black dot in the green region. So what does a Voronoi diagram does? It given n sides or n points, here 3 points, it partitions the plane into regions, we call them Voronoi cells, where every point in such Voronoi cell is closest to the site in that cell. So n is the number of sites, so 3 in this case here. So we have regions, Voronoi cells, but these regions are bounded by edges. So here the edges are marked in white. If you live on an edge, then you have choice between the nearest, which post office is nearest. For all the points on the line, it doesn't really matter if you go to the blue region or if you go to the green region. People who live on the vertex here, they can choose any of the three. So vertex points are where the edges meet, and there's always 3 points that are involved, or at least 3 sides. There the distance is the same. So we have shown in our lecture 20, when we defined Voronoi diagrams, that for n sides, the number of vertices is at most linear in the number of sides, being precise with Euler's characteristic is 2n minus 5. The number of edges is at most 3n minus 6, also linear in the number of sites linear in the input size. So this opened up the possibility for an n log n algorithm. So you can't do any better than n log n. N log n is the cost or also the complexity of sorting n numbers. So you could see this construction of a Voronoi diagram as sorting on point locations, on coordinates. So it's your objects are two-dimensional. Okay, in the development of the algorithm, it was important that we made the distinction between circle event and site events. So circle events were associated with the computation of the vertices. So here you see the circles that have as center vertices of a Voronoi cell. So if you look at the picture, the Voronoi cell for P1, the vertex here with the circle centered at the vertex passes through three sites, three adjacent sites. And this is called the largest non-empty circle. The largest non-empty, it doesn't contain any other site other than these 3 points at the boundary. 3 points serve as a unique characterization of a circle. And you can see that the construction with the bisectors, if you have 3 points, compute the bisectors, and that will give you very quickly a Voronoi diagram. And that construction is actually also the construction to finding the center of the largest non-empty circle. Edges are characterized also with circles. If you have two sides, then you can also construct the largest non-empty circle that contains those two sides on the boundary. You have more freedom on where to put your center of that circle, but it's always on an edge of the and the edge lies on the bisector line. So these are the important characterizations of edges and vertices of a Voronoi diagram. It's here formalized in this slide, in this theorem here. So that was the important result. This theorem and the theorem on the previous slide was kind of the important result of lecture 20. Okay, perhaps I should now go back to some more practical stuff. So here you see on Windows, you can install it on, say, a PowerShell environment, but I felt that the Windows subsystem for Linux is quite nice because with Ubuntu, Seagull is nicely packed. Now, Seagull depends on GMP, the GNU multi-precision, and its wrapper MPFR, so you must also install those two before then you can install Seagull. The -DEF means that you want the development version, you want as a user, C++ user here, to be able to compile, so you must have the header files. We are working with Seagull 5.4, although the version that is available in Ubuntu is 5.4. It doesn't really matter for this course. The examples are separate. So there are plenty of examples. So Seagull is extremely well documented. You can compile it, and I will immediately show how to do this. You also have to copy the input data. I should say that what I have done is I've made a separate folder. You could also do everything in this examples folder. That's perfectly fine as well. Now in the previous lecture, lecture 21, I briefly explained the Python bindings. The Python bindings are constructed with Swig and they follow exactly the same logic. So in some sense, it's not that difficult here. So I'm working with a make file, so perhaps I should make clean first. So here you see how the compilation goes. So my Ubuntu installation comes with a G++ compiler, and since everything is nicely installed, it recognizes. So I have the VD2 point location that I'm constructing now. So I don't like typing in too many commands, so the makefile stores the definition. If you don't have a makefile, you can type in the compilation construction here. I rename the output file, the executable, as the name for that test program. So what does that test program do? Well, let's run it. So here it is. So it constructs a Voronoi diagram for data points. That's why the data points are there. And then it starts querying it. So perhaps I should bring up the source code. So here you see the data file. So it's in data 1.dt.cin. Perhaps let's look at that. So it's in data 1dt for the standard input. Here you see the sequence of points. And that's actually the same sequence of points that you find the um, in the Python script. I didn't change it here, although I'm actually tempted to do that. So we have the square that is here, and then the other points. So I wanted to have a diamond shaped. So if we are going for 100, 100, you may also have 100, 200, and 200, 100, if I remember correctly. So let me run the code again, and what I see here is that it did not query 100, 100, so it queried all kinds of other things. So let me see what are the query points that are being queried. So it opens another file. So this is data1dt.cn. So data1 queries 1dt.cn. And actually, I wanted to query 50/50 is fine. But actually, I want a bit smaller. I wanted to. So there you go. So if you have some geometric insight, and I'm sorry that I'm not showing a picture here, so the Voronoi diagram centered at 100, 100 has vertices 50/50, 50/150, 150/150, and 150/50. So with the picture with Matplotlib in the previous lecture, we visualized this. But I hope to convince you that for once you have everything installed, that actually using Seagull is not that bad. So we have seen the half edge data structure, so the doubly connected edge lists. That is actually also what is used here. Using the same logic, you construct your Voronoi diagram. So here we're reading the points. So here you see that the Voronoi diagram is actually constructed incrementally. So it's by inserting the points. And then it checks whether everything is correct, and then it reads the query points. If your query points are the original sites, then that's one way to enumerate all the Voronoi cells. So Voronoi cells are convex, and very early in the course we've seen that constructing the convex hull of a region is actually ordering the points in counterclockwise or clockwise order. Points that are in right after each other are connected by an edge. Okay, so that is the very brief introduction to using Sigal. Everything goes extremely fast, so constructing a Voronoi diagram goes just as fast as sorting points. Okay, and why is this? Well, there is a sweep line algorithm. So the sweep line algorithm was derived in the previous lecture. Here come the pictures. So what we do is we sort the point according to height, n log n, and then we have a sweep line that traverses through these points from top to bottom. We imagine the parabolic arcs that has as focus, so each arc has as the focus a site, and the directrix is the sweep line. So here you see a site event. So in red is the beach line. So the properties of the beach line as are that the definition is actually that these are the points that are closest to the beach line. So there are parabolic arcs, so they are at the same distance from the focus and the directrix. Whenever the parabolic arc intersect, you are at the same distance of two sides. And that means that you're part of an edge or a bisector, if you like. When the 3 points, when 3 sides are involved, you are at the circle event, and then you are constructing, a vertex. So that's why the characterization of a vertex as the center of the largest non-empty circle passing through 3 sides is so important. Okay, I realize that this is just a geometric, these are just pictures that kind of indicate how you can construct the Voronoi diagram for a given number of sites via a sweep line argument. As an exercise, so what do the parabolas look like if you have the Manhattan metric? Manhattan for the New York City, where everything is very logically designed. So also in Chicago, our streets run either north-south or west-east. So if you have that metric, what do the parabolas look like? So that's an interesting exercise. So that was the justification or the derivation for the sweep line algorithm. Here are the main theoretical results concerning, or the theoretical concepts behind the sweep line algorithm, the definition of the beach line, and the two types of events. So we can have new parabolic arcs that occur, and they can only occur when your sweep line encounters a new site. Arcs can only disappear when you have to make a vertex. So actually when adjacent sites, they define a circle, and at the center of that circle is a vertex. So we have to keep track of the adjacencies. Something that we did already when we considered in an earlier chapter the line segment intersection problem. So in a way, we consider Voronoi diagrams relatively late in this course, chapter 7, in the middle of the semester. But this has the virtue that we have already experienced many classical concepts for simpler problems. The Voronoi diagram is more complex to describe. The line segment intersection problem is somewhat an easier problem. Okay, then the top-down description of a Voronoi diagram involves an event queue, a balanced binary search tree, that's that fancy capital letter T here, and then the Voronoi diagram itself is stored in a doubly connected edge list. So we were popping events. An event can be a site event or it can be a circle event. Then we have two subroutines that will handle those site events. Edges can be line segments. If all the points are collinear, we have seen, then the edges are full lines, and we can only have full lines if the points are collinear, so it goes in both ways. Our half lines go on forever, but of course we have to somehow decide when forever stops, so that's why we also construct a bounding box. Okay, and that bounding box is then also used to update doubly connected edge lists. Okay, two subroutines. So there is the handling of a site event. So in a site event, we have a new parabolic arc that comes in. If our balanced binary search tree is empty, then there's not much that needs to be done. Otherwise, we have to update the adjacency information. It is important that our balanced binary search tree remains balanced. So it's not just one tree with one branch, because that would then mean that the searches into that data structures would be linear. We want logarithmic searches. So we update the event queue as well. And also we are going to update the doubly connected edge lists. Um, this is the high level description of the algorithm. In order to do the rigorous verification of the cost, one must ensure that all the operations in all the statements, that in some sense this is that these are primitive operations. So there is a for loop here. That for loop, one has to ensure also as well that this is a local for. So we don't go over all these sites in every step. No, we only look at where it involves the new site. So it's a for, but it's localized. So everything that happens in the handling of a site event is constant time, except for the logarithmic search, of course, the location. So the let alpha be the arc. So we have to search the balanced binary search tree for the position. The balanced binary search tree will contain the x coordinates of the points. Okay, how do we handle a circle event? Well, with a circle event, we have to update the three data structures. So perhaps in the middle, the doubly connected edge list, so we have to insert a new vertex record. And we also have to create new half edge records. Remember, at the circle event, we have a parabolic arc that is disappearing. So we can actually construct all the edges for the Voronoi cell that contains the site for which the arc is disappearing. So we are deleting an arc. We actually delete also the uh, the point from the search tree actually. So also uh, the circle events actually that are associated to this are actually also being deleted. Um, there is the adjacency information that needs to be adjusted as well. Okay, now I'm halfway this lecture, halfway the 50 minutes, and only now do I get to address the center topic, the cost of computing a Voronoi diagram. So we have an n log n number of operations, and we have an storage cost that is linear in the number of sites. It's again for completeness, we have to remind ourselves that the data consists of an event queue, a balanced binary search tree, and also the Voronoi diagram itself. Now we have the complexity result right from the beginning, that the Voronoi diagram itself is linear, has a linear number of vertices, linear in the number of sites, and linear in the number of edges. So the complexity of a Voronoi diagram is indeed linear. What we store in the doubly connected edge list, we store the faces. So we have as many faces as we have sites. That's indeed linear in n. And then we have all the vertices and all the edges. So in some sense, if we are not going to add and delete, and we are not doing this in this algorithm, we are incrementally only updating the Voronoi diagram. It's never that we add something and then we delete it again. So potentially, if we go through all the n sites, if we something when a site disappears, well, that Voronoi cell is then fixed. Okay, so what is the so perhaps going back, so here what I was explaining on the previous slide concerned the complexity. Also updating a doubly connected edge list. Everything is connected, so once we know where we are in this doubly connected edge list, we can update fairly quickly from the connections. Okay, the balanced binary search tree stores the x coordinates. The number of arcs on this beach line is at most 2n minus 1. How could you see this? Well, we could have our first point, which makes a very large parabola, and then we have all sides coming in that break that one parabola. For every side, we have a parabolic arc, and on the beach line, we can have at most 2n minus 1 arcs. So the fact that we have only that many leaves, it makes then that searching this balanced binary search tree runs in logarithmic time. It also takes an amount of storage that is linear. Okay, so the cost considerations, we consider both at the same time the algorithmic costs and the storage costs. Okay, we have addressed two data structures. We haven't talked yet about the event queue. So here is the event queue. We have the number of sites. So the event queue, you could say, is a priority queue, stores a sorted sequence of numbers. So we have the number of sites, and then we have the number of circle events. And these are the total number of events that can be in there. So the complexity of that data structure is linear, because we can only have a linear amount of circle events. Okay, now we consider all triples. So three sites uh, define uniquely a circle. So it could be that we have to consider too many triples. So whether there can be an intersection point between two bisectors, you can actually check. Um, so how would this work? Well, geometrically, I can probably say what the idea is. So you could have one side that has a bisector that runs like this, and another bisector runs like this. And perhaps it's not too difficult to imagine. So you have one side here and one side there and one here. So this is also a triplet. But these bisectors here, you can see that they're growing apart. So if you have a circle event, then actually you can't really. So the circle that is here is actually over there. This triplet here, it's circle event. Um, so yes, you have situations where circle events may still happen when the bisectors are approaching each other. So by computing the angles between the bisectors, between so the adjacency information is stored. So if you have adjacent sites, um, you check the angles between the bisectors. So this is how you can um, prevent from storing too many event points. So there is the complexity, that is the minimal size of this event queue, but then there is also the cost. So you could still run into trouble if you store every possible triplet. Okay, summary. So in some sense, it took a very long time to get to these cost considerations. Um, so we reasoned mainly on the ideas, on the properties of the data structures. The fact that it was balanced, for example, um, ensures that we have the log-n factor. We run over all the event points, and that is linear. So in some sense, there's a very quick way to kind of intuitively verify that the cost is indeed n log n, and in some sense that might suffice in the first pass. But if you are a rigorous mathematician, then this is highly unsatisfactory. So therefore, the third exercise really indicates the steps of the pseudocode, that actually, as I indicated, that those subroutines, and perhaps you may have to dust off your data structures course, that the subroutines are actually really primitive operations in the sense that the cost does not depend on the size of the input. So that's the purpose of exercise 3. So did we present a rigorous proof? Not really, but it's getting close to it. So exercise 3 will manage this. Okay. What can still go wrong? So what happens if you have points that are at the same height? So which one then comes first in your sweep line algorithm? Which event comes first? Well, you can break ties with the x-coordinates, saying that the leftmost point comes first. This is similar to making a very slight tilt of your coordinate system. One also may need special code. Now, we have worked with configurations in general position. So the degenerate configuration was when all the points are collinear. You can kind of see that if you have a Voronoi diagram where we will have vertices with um, high degree, and in some sense you can start by drawing a star shaped, and then you can see how you can make your Voronoi diagrams like that. I think the simplest example would be to draw a cross. So if I draw my bisectors like this, and then if I strategically position my sites on, um, so in some sense, now you see that if I compute, so this is actually a Voronoi diagram where this vertex here has degree 4. So in some sense, what you have to avoid is that that vertex is actually computed by all choices. So here you can pick 3 out of 4, and this vertex will therefore be computed 4 times. So that's excess. So in some sense, this will also lead to some, there might also be uh, edges that are of length 0. So you consider um, this vertex essentially multiple times. So again, you can work with specialized code that detects this, or at least you have to do some post-processing to make sure that you have no edges of length 0. All right, I'm closing into the end. Let's look at some applications. So we have considered points as sites, but you can also, for example, consider line segments. And you can start by constructing a Voronoi diagram of line segments. So here you see 3 black line segments, and the green, what is shown in green here, um, so we have the points that are closest, and here all the points on this green arc are actually just from the same distance from the line segments. So again, I've drawn this with parabolic arcs. So we have the bottom end. This is the focus of this green parabolic arc here, and the directrix is this arc. Um, So if you imagine that these lines are the walls, and you want to you want to do some robot planning where the robot stays exactly in the middle or exactly at the same distance from all the walls, then the green actually indicates the paths that the robot should travel. So that is a variation on the Voronoi diagram for line segments. If you're really into some specific projects, then you could pick that as a project, read the relevant section in the textbook, and eventually look up some additional literature. Okay, so one can also look into the farthest point Voronoi diagrams. So um, if you look here to this point, then all the points for which, so the green area here is associated to P, and that is actually all the regions that have that point as their farthest point. So this is a subject also from manufacturing. It's called metrology. Read up to the textbook what it really is. So this is where uh, the quality control of manufactured objects, how much uh, tolerance, what is the smallest bit an analyst uh, gives you somewhere tolerances for objects that have been manufactured. Okay, with this I'm getting close to also the limits of what I have prepared. Um, so we are closing off the essence of chapter 7. In some sense, we are not dealing with chapter 7 entirely. So these are sections 7.3 and 7.4 are marked with a star. Um, but I think that for now we have covered relatively carefully what Voronoi diagrams are, how a sweep line algorithm leads to essentially an optimal algorithm with a cost n log n to construct such Voronoi diagrams very efficiently and very quickly. So we are in the middle of the course. At some point, we will still have a second midterm. We have a second project, but at some point, you will have to decide whether to go for a final exam or for a final project. So this lecture has, in some sense, two topics for applications that are suitable topics for a final project as they go a little bit more deeper into material that we have covered.